Welcome to Season 10 of How to Start Up, the podcast helping you start and scale your business with advice from entrepreneurs on what to do now, next, or never when scaling your company. This season, we're focusing on all things brand, so you'll hear from a series of amazing entrepreneurs on what they've learnt in their own journeys. Hosted by me, Juliet Fallowfield, founder of the B Corp certified PR and communications consultancy, Fallowfield & Mason. Our mission is to enable you to own your communications in-house with a long-term view. Building, scaling and maintaining one brand is challenging enough. However, successfully scaling and creating multiple brands is a brilliant feat of focus and endurance. And with this in mind, I wanted to have a chat with an expert brand builder. Hind Sebti is the founder of Whind, a beauty brand that merges both science and sensoriality to deliver golden hour beauty. And also the co-founder of Waldencast, a beauty and wellness platform that creates, acquires and scales the next generation of high-growth, purpose-driven brands. It does not stop there. Waldencast Ventures is a privately owned brand incubator that has launched and built Whind, but also has sister brands Coats and Glaze. Waldencast plc acquired OG Skincare and Milk Makeup and was listed on NASDAQ in July 2022 and valued then at over $1 billion. As a multi-brand builder, Hind has a wealth of experience building brands that win customers' hearts across multiple categories. Keep listening to hear Hind's advice on building multiple brands and effectively managing these different businesses at the same time. Thank you, Hind, for your time today on How to Start Up. It is wonderful to have you here. Before we get into talking about running multiple companies and building multiple brands, it would be wonderful if you could kick off with an introduction, a bit about yourself and a bit about the businesses that you've started.
Okay, thank you so much for having me, Juliet. So I'm Hind. I am Moroccan born and raised. I've been in the UK for 15 years now, and I spent all my career in beauty. I knew very early on that what I wanted to do was work in this industry because growing up in Morocco, I'm not sure how familiar you're with the country, but it's a country of beauty landscape, architectures, but beauty rituals. So I saw firsthand how rituals and beauty rituals are important and a kind of a connection with other people and with yourself. So I thought that would be an amazing industry to be part of. So I started my career 25 years ago in France, which is what I went for school. And I started at Procter & Gamble. I spent there 10 years or so and moved to the UK with P&G. And then I moved to L'Oréal because I knew as an engineer, I started in supply chain, but I knew I wanted to go into branding. So I pivoted. I was very happy to do that early on in my career. And since then, it's been product management, brand management, and then general management across only beauty, hair, skin, makeup. So yes, that took me from P&G to L'Oréal. And after quite a few years at L'Oréal, I realized I wanted to continue my dream into beauty. But this is where the entrepreneurial bug caught up with me. And I was like, but I want to do beauty on my own way. And that was the beginning of the entrepreneurship journey for me.
Amazing. And what was it that gave you that bug? And how long do you ignore it before you actually embraced it?
You know, it's very interesting because I think you only figure it out backwards, right? Because it was never evident until it suddenly was, and it became kind of like an urgent itch. So for me, I was in my mid to late 30s and I loved the industry, loved my job, was having a lot of fun, but something was missing. And I think for me, it was doing things my own way and having 100% responsibility and accountability of shaping a brand, a business. And once it got there, I could not ignore it. But when I look backwards, I realized that from an early age, one of the values that I value the most is freedom. Mm-hmm. Of like to question ourselves. I was like, but 20, I was not ready. I was nowhere ready. And we didn't have the maturity, the courage, the readiness to do it. And when people ask me about entrepreneurship, I always say it's not for everyone. You know how it's too glorified and it's so glamorous? It's like, it is not that glamorous. If it's for you, it will find you. If it's not for you, that's fine because it's a lot of hard work. So you need to really be fulfilling something much deeper, like for me, that desire for freedom to be able to do it.
It's so similar. It makes me laugh because now I'm self-employed and I'm in PR and communications. On the outside, everyone thinks you go for long lunches and just drink champagne every day. And on the inside, you're like, it's really hard work. And I think for me, similar to you, I had this experience of working for incredible brands and an amazing training school. But it got to the point where I was done with other people waving their hand at me, like, oh, PR will fix this, as if it's sort of dismissive. I was like, no, I can do this on my own and I can do it my way. So I love the fact you said that, but it was a real sort of moment in your life's journey that it caught up with you. But when you kind of recognized that, did you think, right, I'm going to be a serial entrepreneur? Because you're not just running one business, you're running more than one. Was that evident?
No.
Was that a kind of blessing and a curse at the same time?
I think it was a blessing and a curse, and it was timing, right? Because from the time when I decided to start something, I mean, it was not just something that was...
What was the something?
For me, it was starting Whind, right? Yeah. Because it was the most concrete. I am a brand builder at heart and a beauty obsessed. And I think just seeing the world of beauty, I was like, oh my God, I am missing something, which is a brand that marries both the performance that we all want from beauty and skincare in particular, but also that kind of longing to the rituals and the indulgence that I grew up in. So I found myself a bit frustrated by not finding the best of both worlds and always compromising. And so I thought, oh, if I'm like this, a lot of consumers are like me. So I'm going to create something to answer this functional need of consumers that want science and sensoriality. And as I started working on it, I realized, and I'm sure it's something that you have felt as well, is having worked all my life on other people's brands. Now that I had carte blanche to create my vision of beauty, when it started shaping, I realized that I put a lot of my Moroccan or Mediterranean identity in it as well. And I didn't notice it. Other people were like, oh, terracotta for skincare. Oh, this feels Moroccan. And I was like, how? No, there is no terracotta brand in Morocco. And there's nothing like this in Morocco. And then I realized actually that I put the cues of my interpretation of Morocco, the warmth, etc., in it. And then it unlocks a next level of brand building, which is, it's not just about a product that does science and sensoriality, it's also a beauty point of view that is inspired by how we experience beauty in Morocco, which is warmth, sisterhood, in the hammam ritual, happiness, joy, because it's about, celebrating beauty, not beauty as a chore. So that was step one. And it was very concrete for me because I could do it within what I learned in my career. I'm a big believer in universe and timings, and things happen for a reason. And before I jumped in, I did a sense check, right? I was like, I need to ask an adult, somebody with better sense than me, because I'm a dreamer. So I tend to really jump into things. And I asked Michel Brousset, who used to be my boss in the UK and then moved on to be the head of L'Oréal Consumer North America. And I told him at the time, Michel, I'm going to do something mad. I want to leave this kind of wonderful life that I have today and be sitting on my kitchen table, starting a new brand by myself. I've never worked by myself in my career, but I really want to do it. So tell me if I'm crazy. And actually, he did quite the opposite. He said, wow, all the growth we see happening today in beauty is coming from independent beauty brands that are coming from a place of authenticity. So I don't think you're crazy at all. Step one. And step two, he said, and actually, I am thinking of the same. I'm thinking of starting not a brand, but many, many brands, and actually starting Waldencast, which is the house of independent beauty brand. Either we create them, we invest in them, or we acquire them. So we started Waldencast and Whind at the same time out of just, the timing couldn't have worked any better. So this is how I ended up from day one having twins, and many, many other projects came in after. So it was an accidental luck, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Every time I ask a founder if there's anything they go back and do differently, it's like, well, no, because then I wouldn't be here today. And some people will argue with me on this, but I think time is more precious than revenue. Because money will come and go and it will flow, whereas time is finite. There are only 24 hours in a day. How do you find the time?
I have two answers to this question. First, in a macro way. If I look at it today, I love this kind of conversation because it's a point in time when I stop and think, because I don't have time to stop and think and look backwards, right?
Yeah.
And I look at it and I'm like, when you say, oh, you've done all these things, it's almost like an aha moment. And I'm like, oh yeah, I actually done these things. And I am surprised as well. But then when I look at it backwards, I'm like, actually, from the decision to start Waldencast, right? It was just the two of us, Michel and I, Waldencast, with a big vision to build this amazing beauty company, but just the two of us and our own life savings as the life of the entrepreneur and our investors. And we said, where do we start? So we started in March 2019 with Waldencast Ventures, where we said, we're going to invest in other people's brands. We're going to find brands that we think have amazing potential that need resources in terms of money and also operational know-how, because to scale in beauty is not about passion. You need more because it's a complex industry, as we know. So 2019 was a year when we built Waldencast Ventures, where we met more than 500 entrepreneurs, invested in 7 brands, learned a bit of I call it my PhD in early brands, right? Because I had worked at Procter & Gamble, L'Oréal. I've never worked in baby
Startup.
brands.
Yeah.
It was really through other people's experiences, 500 of them and more, that I was like, oh my God, so many different stories. And I'm so thankful for that, because it has enriched me so much in terms of the entrepreneurial world. And by the end of 2019, we said, okay, we know how this is working. We had invested in 7 brands, minority investment, and parallel, I was working on Wind, because that was kind of my personal vision. And we were working in a list of brands that we thought were missing in the world, that would have happily invested in them had they existed. And this is where the idea of glaze came to us. And it came to us from a lifetime where we spent in hair color in our previous lives, and thinking this category so needs a refresh. It's so boring. It hasn't changed for 50 years. The packaging, the formulas, the application, we need something newer and fresher, almost like a tinted moisturizer for your hair to redynamize the category. Then we thought about coats, which is what about Gen Z and all these younger consumers coming into skincare with no brand that is really educating them. So we realized actually now we have so many brand ideas, we need to create the Waldencast Brands Incubator. So this is where we started hiring our team here in London to work on the brands. We kind of the founders of, because we think of them and conceptualize them, but the team to bring them to life, do product development, and then go to market. And through this journey, and somewhere in COVID in 2020, we realized, in our vision of building this big beauty company, we have baby brands that we create, toddler brands that we invest in. It's going to take a long time. We need more teenagey brands, sturdy brand. And this is where we were like, actually, that requires much more money than private investment. It needs to be public money. So we went and created Waldencast PLC, which was publicly listed. And this is how we raised the funds to buy Milk and Obagi. And I think when I look back, it was a phasing. In 2019, we were focused on ventures and building the foundation. 2020, we built our incubator. By the time the brands were ready, we moved on 2021 to do the acquisition. So the timing worked well in the macro scope of things, right? We haven't started them all at the same time. Now, I think one of the biggest learning is sometimes you're always asking how much is too much, right? Because there's so much to do. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you can spend 24/7 working, have multiple brands and multiple priorities. It is the same. So what we did, I think what is core is the teams. You need your team that you can rely on and say, okay, what is the thing that I can uniquely do as a founder? And what is the other things that I can delegate to my team? And I think that is hard, because sometimes it's hard to let go of your, babies and projects, etc. So for me, this prioritization of what is important for the future of the business, where I spend my time and where am I uniquely needed. I'm not saying that it was easy. We made mistakes and we'll learn as you go, etc. But I think that has been the only way you can manage multiple things. When I think about my personal kind of how to manage the time, I think it's also prioritization of what is going to make the biggest difference, right? And I have to hold myself accountable to it and not get distracted by the thousands of wonderful things that I wish I was doing, which by definition means that I do more of the things I enjoy less.
Yeah.
But,
I actually caught up with a friend who lives in Sydney, and she used to run Lauder over there, and big beauty career. Now she runs a charity in Australia. And I went for a walk with her a couple of years ago in Bondi, and she's like, have you not heard of rock, pebble, sand? I was like, no. And she's like, you've got a glass every day of time, and you need to put the big chunky rocky things in first, then put the pebbles around it, and then put the sand in. Because you try and put the sand in first and then the pebbles and the rock won't fit. The sand are the emails, the WhatsApp, the notifications. The rocks are the 2-hour deep dive project focus work. And I saw her 2 hours ago, and my team were like, Holly, you talked to us about rock. And they use it all the time. And so we tackle our work weeks like, okay, what's the rock work we need to get done? And it's so satisfying when you tick it off the list and you've beaten it. And then you can waste an hour on Instagram if you need to and all that kind of stuff. But you've done right by your day. But it's so hard to, especially at the beginning, to know what those priorities are, because everything is urgent, everything is needed. How did you work out where your strengths were and what you would then outsource or delegate?
At the beginning, you do everything. as you know. And I think it's the biggest thing that I always tell people when you move from corporate world and to entrepreneurship, especially from big roles. I was like, yes, I had an office, I had a PA, I had so many teams doing things for me. And suddenly I'm working from my home and I have to do the boxes that I send myself. And that's okay.
I love a beauty send out.
If you ever tell yourself, I can't believe I'm doing this, then this is not for you. Because the entrepreneur is, at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. So you do what has to be done. You're like the ultimate sweeper, right?
Yes.
So you cannot go to sleep and say, oh, somebody else will figure it out. So at the beginning, you do everything. And I think by that doing everything, I'm not saying it's easy, I'm still working on this a lot, is you figure it out, the things that only you can do, right? So I am the only one that can do this part of the job. I'm the only one that can do this podcast, which I enjoy very much.
Yes.
I am the only one who can actually judge kind of the direction of a brand and make a decision. But I am not the only one who can go to every single shoot. I am not the only one that has to be involved in every single element of the product development. I'm not the one that needs to be in every retailer meeting, right? And it's not easy because you have this tension always of controlling, because if you do this business as well, I want to know every single thing. But it's that self-discipline of I cannot be involved in every single thing. And the second bit is, one of our values at Waldencast is ambition with humility, right? So we want to do all of these things, but we know that the competencies that we don't have, if I am going to do, for example, PR or communication, I am going to work with somebody like Becky and then trust that she's going to do that. I'm not going to go in the detail over her, right? And if I have somebody that I need to be in the detail, that is not the right person, right? And you have to make these decisions fast, because I think that thing that you don't have, as you said earlier, as an entrepreneur, is time. Time is everything. So you have to be more decisive on what is working, what is not working for you, be it processes, people, etc., because it's the only way to move forward.
Would you say, just bringing it back to brand quickly, would you say you've benefited from doing these multiple businesses and ventures at the same time, and they've fed each other at the same time?
This is like the $1 million question I ask myself every day. You know what? I find that doing everything at the same time was harder. Okay, for sure, because you don't have one focus, you're always having something going on, because the more multiple priorities, the more chances for something to go wrong. It's higher statistically, right? But I think I wouldn't have done it any other way because of the learnings. When we launched Wind, it was the first brand we launched in April 2021, right? It was just on the back of COVID. And I was like, I just want to have this brand out because I want to see what people are thinking about it. And the thinking at the time was, my vision was to do like a global concept test. So we're going to launch it only on e-commerce and launch it everywhere. So we can see which country or region have more pull. And I was interested because that was my theoretical brand strategy kind of thing. I mean, it'd be amazing to see how it does. What I learned in the process as we were launching Wind is actually the logistic complications, the heavy lift you have to do just on that. That when you are in a market, you have to also invest in the market for people to know your brand. And then you start stretching your money too thinly. So I was like, that was a great on paper idea. And it gave us some insight that the Middle East, the US, the UK were strong markets for us, and North Africa, but it was hard. So as we were thinking of launching Glaze very early on, I said, we will wait to launch Glaze until I know more about Wind. And the learnings on Wind in terms of DTC, I was like, okay, we're not going to launch globally. We're going to do UK and US first. And you know what? We might benefit from having retail quicker for awareness, because it was more down the line from COVID where stores were more confident and things will open. So, and then for Coats as well. Coats was ready to launch at the same time as Glaze. I was like, hang on, I want to make this a mistake once, ideally, and not repeat it for every launch. So launching them all at the same time is like having 3 babies. You know, you phase it. So one takes care of the other. So I find having all the brands with different brand positioning, business model, prestige, mass, distribution channel, consumer targets, benefits was a lot that for me as a person that wants to build a multi-brand platform, it was immensely insightful. And I think a key to our success, because then the scale comes in, the scale of learning. Coats is start trying TikTok, right? Wind is going to try Pinterest, and whoever cracks it, then we can roll it out across the brands, right? I think I see a lot of benefit on it, and also the benefit of not putting all your eggs in one basket in terms of success, because beauty is an amazing industry that grows sustainably, etc. But, has variance between now skincare is hot, tomorrow makeup is hot, color, hair. So when you play multi-category, you also
diversify your risk.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this approach works when you're thinking mid to long term. You're not thinking quick, oh, I'm going to do this and exit in 2 years, right? Yeah, it's not going to work, because in 2 years, focusing on 3 brands, you're not going to get them. It's almost like the Nike shape is you do that investment in the strong foundations, and you learn and you tweak and you tweak and you tweak. So when you accelerate. And this is what we're seeing on the brands. It was more craftsmanship and learnings. And then when they take off with the learnings, and it's much easier.
Well, you've got so many data points to pull from. And I definitely think any learning when you're starting a business that you can put back into your business and not make that same mistake again is key. And there's a few times I've kicked myself and gone, I should have known better. But every day is a school day. And any conversation you have with anyone you learn from, like someone said to me the other day, the best piece of advice they were given is like, you never regret a conversation. Make time for the conversations, because you always learn. And that's, obviously, as a communications person, I'm thrilled to hear that. But it takes time as well. But I'm with you on that slow growth, because you hold on to it for longer and you're in it for the right reasons as well. But I love the fact you're across different categories. You've got this sort of halo view of the whole category and then individual brands, and you're cross-pollinating those learnings between them. Are all your brand teams in under the one roof, or remote? Is it a blend? How do you share that information between your brands?
So we are first and foremost brand people. So we believe in the power of a brand. Beauty is not an industry of leveraging scale on terms of putting everything in the same room and making them do the same things repeatedly. So we have brand leads across, be it Milk or Obagi. They have CEOs that take care of them independently. But we have brand lead on Wind, on Glaze and Coats, and from the beginning. What we have in common, and it's the vision across the Waldencast platform, is when you are one indie brand, it's very difficult to get quickly the critical mass to invest in key capabilities and key talents, right? If you are one brand, you're focusing on the products and the communication. You're not focusing on how to have a super effective logistic organization. All of those things that are always, we felt in our experience, an afterthought that comes sometimes a bit late. And then you have to undo things. So what we're able to do is we have a best-in-class capabilities when it comes to e-commerce, data, insights, etc. That for the brands we create, so the brands we invest in, so the brands we acquire, it gives us a competitive edge in terms of, this is what we call the Waldencast platform, in terms of sharing best practices, but also sharing tools. The way we are is we have our team between London and New York. So our team, our brands team, ventures team is based in London. We have Milk and Obagi in the US, but we also have an international footprint. We have teams on Obagi in Southeast Asia, where we have our own organization. So it's a bit global right now. I have to say, I love the flexibility that we can have to work from anywhere, because the most important thing is that we are performance driven. So we need to get the job done. How? I not want to, track people's time, but I think there's a huge benefit in the industry we're in to being together. One of our strength, and we like to talk about it at Waldencast, is we say scale and speed. And speed comes from making decisions fast, and making decisions fast comes from being together and looking at the problem from multiple, touch points, a problem or opportunity. So we create spaces, be it in Long Beach, New York, or here in London, that kind of foster that collaboration. It's very important for us, like face-to-face in-person meetings, but of course with the flexibility to adapt to people's conditions.
I mean, I know from my business, service businesses, it's very different for a product-led business. We've got this incredible blend between really rich debates and laying stuff out and physically looking and touching. If we're working with product-based brands, that is a very different thing to a Zoom call or an email or a LinkedIn DM. And I think finding that blend and that sort of ratio between how much face time you need to how much time away from each other you need as well, especially with client work as well, seeing clients face to face versus seeing clients on Zoom. But I think we're in a privileged position to be able to do that, because not every business can. Like, we work with a lot of jewelry makers, and they have to be at a bench under security with a safe with diamonds in it. You can't really do that at home that often. So it's a hard one. I am fascinated to see how the world of work will change and has changed.
We tend to put the horse before the carriage, or vice versa. Because at the end of the day, people are talking, is it 3 days a week, 2 days a week, 15 days a week? It depends on your business, because I think it starts with what do we need to do to be successful? And not in a dogma, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is required to be successful? I can tell you firsthand, when we were developing products in COVID, we made so many mistakes. Because, we've never spent as much money on couriering things. I courier this to you, you check this in isolation between two things, etc. Well, actually, then we make it a mistake. The pump doesn't work because of the viscosity, but this packaging is this and that. Because we are in beauty, in an industry of details, and we're in an industry of selling products. Not only look at them in our office, but look at them in retail. We need to look at other people's product. We need to look how it looks on the shelf. We need to look that if I do my packaging and I'm so happy with what I've written here, and once it's on the shelf, it's going to sit behind the label, it's going to hide it. Well, good luck to me. You know what I mean? It's so much. So I realize,
context is king.
Oh my God, I've been doing this for 20 years and I did newbie mistakes during COVID because I just lacked that extra context. So it starts with what is required to be successful in your business, in your brand, and therefore what is the organization that needs to be there, the type of offices, the type of meetings, and it's not one size fits all. And then talent or people can decide which type of business and organization they need to be part of, not the other way around.
I was reading this raconteur article to say that in 5 years, most of the big companies in the UK will demand 5 days a week back in the office. And it's typically middle-aged white men who are sitting there with a nanny and an au pair who don't need to get home for school pickups, making these decisions, and it's impacting people. But I see it on the flip side. It's like, hang on, guys, for 20 years, I commuted for 48 weeks of the year, 5 days a week, and I was in before my boss and I left after my boss. So if you've even got one day at home, we've made some progress. So let's just be aware of this. And some people in finance are like, this is our company culture. If you don't like it, you don't have to work here. Mm-hmm. So it's a fascinating debate. However, I feel like we've gone off topic slightly around brands.
Yeah, but it links to kind of the concept of entrepreneurship.
And company cultures.
Company culture, right? Is you set it up. This is part of what you're creating. You're just not joining. And there's no... I always say, as an entrepreneur, you're building the plane when you're flying it, right? You have a vision, you know where you're going, but you have to be agile to adapt. I always say what we know to be successful, at least in our company, is you need to believe in the dream. We're going to be building the next big beauty company, global best in class, worldwide, well, beauty and wellness, etc. You need to understand that the most important asset we have is the people, because not the two of us that build it, that we understand. But you also need to be flexible, that we don't know exactly how we're going to get there, because we're learning. We have a plan, but we also need to adapt if that plan is not, everything we have done, we didn't know it before. As long as you have the big North Star and everything you do is taking you there, somebody goes, oh, I have an amazing business opportunity in pet care. We're like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Hang on. We do beauty and wellness, regardless how amazing, regardless it's a great founder, it's a lot of money, it's easy, we can do it in our sleep. No, this is what we're doing. I think you have to be agile and figure it out. And figuring out is also part of the company culture. So I'm like, if you are somebody who wants to come to a job and say, here's your job description, and it's exactly what you're going to do, then I'm sorry. It's not going to work. And I think we developed it to interviews. So now I say it in interviews. I'm saying, listen, it's not for everyone. Entrepreneurship, but also Waldencast. And I'm going to tell you exactly, my objective is not to seduce you at all costs and then you're unhappy. It's for you to know what you're walking in, because for some people, they love it. And for some people, they hate it. And that's completely fine.
To manage people's expectations is everything. And it's game changing when you get the right talent in your business. And the best and the worst part of the job is the people. But what I've learned from my team, I have 2 exceptional colleagues who every day teach me something. And that's why I love it, because we have these dynamic conversations together and they challenge me and they question me. Because from the beginning, I was like, I have had this very fortunate career in luxury brands. I can cherry pick the best bits from them and give this to them of what I've learned, like goal documents, progression, training, open office, work remotely, whatever it is. And I keep surveying them, because we got B Corp 6 months ago. It's like feedback. Thank you. It's like, talk to me and tell me when you want to find another job. And if I can't promote you or give you the opportunity, I will help you find it somewhere else. They're like, what? It's like, well, A, I got a longer lead time to replace you, but B, I want you to succeed. And I feel like that open dialogue has really helped me have security and trust them, they trust me. And working remotely, especially, trust is fundamental. If you don't have that, you've got nothing. But the people make or break being an entrepreneur.
And I think when you talked about the time, how to do the priorities and the time, I think there's also a thing that when people talk about work smart, not hard, I think it's sometimes a bit of a myth and misleading, because I look at my 25 years and I'm like, I worked smart and hard,
Yeah.
And I think we sometimes don't help people by saying, oh, just work smart. What does that mean? For most people, you need both, depending what you want to achieve, right? And I find it that it's not about working smart and so on, it's how you create your own balance. I work, yes, I can say I work, I have no stop 24/7, da 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 da. But I know what I need for my balance. And my balance is not to be at my home at 5 p.m. or to do this or to have a Sunday. It's something else. And I always encourage people as part of our culture to find what this is for them. You only can define what this is. As a company culture, we say you have to find it. But I'm not going to say 9 to 5, have a lunch break. It's too prescriptive. I was like, I don't care about a lunch break, but maybe somebody else does. And I think we have to encourage people, especially in more entrepreneurial startup world where you have to write the rules. If you join a startup or you want to start a business, you're writing all the rules, including this ones.
Have you written your own job description? I should say.
My job description? No, there's no job description.
It's been on my to-do list since I started. And I was like, there's no point. It's A, going to take me days, and B, it's going to change weekly. So what's the point? But I feel because you're employing people, it's like, here's a job description or a job outline. It will change, and we want it to change. We want to bring you in and then see where you land and what excites you. And then we can sculpt more work in that direction. Because I think if someone's happy doing what they're doing, they'll do more of it and they'll do it better. One day want to write my own job description to be like, is this actually realistic? Because I think there are so many hats that you wear, and it sounds like you've absolutely nailed it of like, I know my strengths, I know how I tick, I know what I need to do that's going to shift the business, and everything else other people can do. That's such good advice, especially when you're building these brands, because product building is a lot of work and you need a lot of stuff and you need a lot of things. But finding that sweet spot, I think you've clearly done it really quickly, which is so impressive.
Yeah, I don't want it to look like I figured it out. It's the theory that I'm trying to hold myself accountable to, it's a work in progress.
Well, I think just being aware is half of the problem. If you're completely ignorant to something, and then what someone said to me, it's the shark that you can't see that bites you. And it's always when I was living in Australia and I never really wanted to go in the ocean that much. I was like, oh God. And then an Aussie mate is like, as long as there's someone further out than you. And I was like, how can I apply this to business? But I'm yet to do that. But no, I think in the juggle is real. And a lot of people are like, wow, you have endless holiday and you can travel as much as you like. And it's like, yes, I'm a service-based business. I can travel as much as I like, but I'm always on and I'm always working, and that I keep a plant alive and I manage to take the recycling out. I don't have kids and I don't have a family, so I can give it my all, but that's not healthy. So watching you do multiple brands as well as overseeing so many other things, it's so impressive. And I was going to ask, does it all come down to the right people? Do you have one good piece of advice when it comes to recruiting the right talent?
I say beauty is my work, my life, my hobby. When I'm not working, I'm down at Harrods, Space NK, speaking to BAs. I don't know anything else.
You're a beauty, funky like the rest of us, yeah.
Exactly. I don't know. Like if somebody said stop, I don't know what I would do because I generally really love it so much. Second, as a person, I thrive on the freedom to build. So the challenges, of course, you have that moment like, oh my God, this is tough. You go, oh, okay. So we're building, one step at a time. And where I was also personally, I think what helps me beyond my prioritization is it doesn't come, I think as one individual is really hard to have all these beautiful principles and hold yourself accountable. What I have is a co-founder that is absolutely amazing. And we are complementary where we need to be complementary and similar where we need to be similar. So having somebody to share the burden with is huge. Number one advice I give to entrepreneurs is if you find somebody that you can be a co-founder with is amazing. It's also very tricky because it's a very tough balance to find somebody that you can, work with 24/7, etc. So I think both of us were very lucky because we rely on each other to be like the checks and balances. You cannot do it for yourself. You have somebody that sees everything you're doing and say, you know what, focus maybe this on that. I will focus on this. So I think it's immensely helpful. When it comes to advice in terms of starting, I think the most important question is, why are you doing this?
And what does success look like to you?
And what does success look like? Well, it's interesting, when I started this whole venture thing 5 years ago, we were speaking to companies in the US, And you would meet founders. It would say, I want to create this brand. And what is your big vision? They were like, I want to be $1 billion brand. Fantastic. You want to be $1 billion brand. Everybody wanted to be like a Glossier at the time, right? It's a success model, which is fine. But then people are coming to venture capital and asking for money makes sense. When we went more into Europe, we would meet businesses, beautiful brands. And we're like, so what's the future? Like build a $5 million business. Wonderful. Because with a $5 million business, you can have a very nice life, right? Mm-hmm. And you can have a very nice life with having $1 billion business, but it is not the same life. So you have to explain, this shows me you will remain in control of your business. It's going to be a family business. You make 100% of the decisions, but you most likely going to remain small. You want to be big and you want to take big investments. Well, you'll have other people who will have opinions. You will be held accountable to other people. You know, when you take people's money, it's a different game. I think people are not often aware of that in my experience. So what does success look like? What kind of business do we want to build? For which purpose? And how do you want the journey to look like, right? Do you want to be left by alone? Do you want a team? You know, it's very important because it's all about setting up expectation. And the biggest why is when things get tough, you never question it. You know, for me, and of course we had amazing time, but really tough times. That's the reality of entrepreneurship. And at no point, regardless how tough it is, you question why you're doing it. You're just doing it, you know, you're in it. So you're more in problem solving. That's why I said earlier, I think we glamorize entrepreneurship too much. It is one of many career opportunities. It's great to have a corporate career. It's great to work in small. All of them are great as long as you know what you want, because each one of them has a positive and also a trade-off, and you need to pick the one that works for you. For me, dedicating everything to Waldencast is great. I am all in. I'm an all-in person. I don't know how to do things half-baked. Even when I was working at other people's companies, I was all in anyway.
Do you look back now? I remember working to midnight at Burberry for 6 months straight and weekends. I look back going, why did I not stockpile those hours for when I need them now? I worked so hard for other people and I'm now kicking myself being like, was I an idiot or was I just learning and happy? But I wanted to do it at the time.
Yeah, same. I never questioned it. And I think that's part of the, you know,
the joy.
Joy, yeah.
So something that we do with our guests is that the previous guest from the previous episode had a question for you. And it was an interview with one of the co-founders of Rixo, Henrietta, who wanted to know what meeting was the most instrumental when it came to your business. Because she thought there's always those conversations that you have with people that are turnkey moments or light bulb moments and they stick with you. Which one of those for you is a real stake in the ground?
That's a very, very good question.
And by all means, take some time to think about it because it's quite a big question.
I mean, there were so many, but I think if I go back to the story I said at the beginning, my not light bulb moments, but the first time I said out loud, I want to do my own business. And as a person, my personality is I do not ask people. You know, I like to take my decisions myself. I don't ask for advice because I think it's so personal. People are not you and they will always give you maybe a good advice, but anchored maybe in a personal experience. So when it's really big, I try to get to my decision and then validate it, right? So I've been thinking about this and it was really hard because I'm like, oh my God, I am going to do something. I have always been by the book student, you know, doing playing by the rule, having teams, etc., etc. I was like, I'm going to go and end up alone in my kitchen. For me, that was the image. That was scary. And I think the moment when I spoke to Michelle and it came from a conversation, which is, oh, what do you want your next big role to be at L'Oréal? I want to be doing something by myself. I want to create my own thing. And half expecting that somebody's going to like, oh, this is so ridiculous, which a lot of people, I mean, most people have said that later.
Yeah.
But at the time, and have the person that I respect the most, you know, tell me, actually, this is not even saying, okay, but saying this is an excellent thing I'm not one for validation, but it's the best validation I could have had. So that filled me with a sense of belief. And that was even beyond what I had. And that's why I think the partnership we had as well was amazing. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, and it's kind of why this is the meeting the event that I picked versus many investor meetings and lots of things like that, is that moment where as an entrepreneur, when people told me, oh, it's so risky to live corporate life and do this. And I was like, where's the risk? right? Because at the end of the day, I am betting on myself as an entrepreneur. You are your product, right? Yes, of course, you create brand and you create things, but they create because of what you have inside of you. So I am betting, for me, Waldencast was risk-free almost, because I was betting on myself and on Michelle, who is the other person that I think is the best in the world. So I'm like, no. And also, like, everything you learn makes you a stronger, better business person. So I didn't see where the risk was, but it was the most common thing that people told me afterwards, and the risk and things. Where is the risk?
I'm so with you. For the first year, it was my closest and nearest, dearest friends that kept sending me jobs on LinkedIn. I'm like, guys, I've got a job. I made a job up for myself. I'm employed just by a company I started. I took great offense. I was like, do you not think I can do this? Because I'm doing this. It's happening. And I had no idea where my business was going to go. And it obviously has shifted and changed and evolved. But I was giving it my best shot, and I've never thought about it that way. I thought I diversified my risk by having multiple clients, not one salary. I was made redundant, lost my entire income, and now with a few clients, the risk is spread. But the fact that they kept sending me jobs of like, well, surely you want to go back in house, you want to do work for someone else, and you get that taste of freedom. You're like, hell no. This is it.
Exactly.
And actually, this is my light bulb moment right now of like, I'm betting on myself. I know how hard I can work. I know how much I can learn. I know also the minimum I need to live and survive. Someone said at the beginning, work out your burn rate. Like, how much money do you need to live off a month? Bare minimum to keep a roof above your head. And then that will keep you sleeping at night, because you know the bare minimum is actually a lot less than you thought it was. So things like that. But betting on yourself, I love that. That's fantastic. And what would your question be for the next guest?
I mean, the question, if I position it from like a startup point of view, and it's the why. What is the big goal? What keeps you going? For some people, it's money. For some people, it's filling a dream. For me, I'm going to answer my own question.
No, I'd love to know your answer.
We talk about successes and products and things. Of course, we care about that. But when I receive emails from people who want to join us, so especially young women, I have a big passion for young women in leadership. When I look at people who join us, people that approach me to say, I listen to your podcast and I like to see a different kind of model in this industry or in leadership. It doesn't have to be tough. It can be soft, and you can be kind, and you can be yourself, and you can still be successful on your own terms. I think creating Waldencast for me is creating that platform to allow us to do this on a bigger scale for both consumers and various stakeholders. And nothing makes me happier. I received an email yesterday, actually, from a young Moroccan student, and I read it. And I'm like, this is really what gets me here. And I'm like, okay, whatever I'm doing something good, because you inspire.
It's so much bigger than the bottom line. Totally. That's just a means to an end. Oh, congratulations. It's so impressive and really exciting. Beauty, as you said, needed this shake-up. And also you're leading the way for the behemoths to look back and go, oh, we better get our ducks in a row. Because we both come from good schools of big brands, but, they need a bit of a shake-up now and again. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for your time. It's been wonderful chatting.
Oh, thank you, Juliet. I really enjoyed it.
I really hope you've enjoyed this conversation. You can find a recap of all the advice so kindly shared by our guest in the show notes, along with their contact details. We'd love it if you could rate and review or share this podcast, because it really does help other people discover it. To incentivize this a little, I would very happily offer you one of our PR guides on how to share editorial coverage legally. Just DM us or send us an email, hello@fallowfieldmason.com, with review in the title, and we'll share it on.